good evening and good morning to different folks in different parts of the world. In this presentation, I will quickly go through, evolution of UX and specifically focus on the types of evolving organizations and the type of careers. Without wasting much time, let's move on. So what we'll see in this presentation will cover 4 parts actually: how the UX has evolved over time and what is the predicted growth of UX. Overall, what is the UX organization and structures in this complex world of UX, because UX is growing as a profession. So, the complex structures are existing in large enterprise organizations. And then what are the future trends and the UX skills that will be required to be acquired in the future with the changing world and the changing environment. And last, for very small amount of time, we'll quickly touch on UX interviews, basically for the folks who are new to UX as a career. And after this session, what I understand, there is also a career session. So, maybe in that session, people will discuss in details. So let's look what the evolution of UX is, right? So when was the UX design was given name? So it was in 1995 by Donald Norman. But if you see, some form of UX existed from 4000 BC, right? So there was some notion of UX, but the name, the UX was given in 1995, right? So moving on to the next slide, let's look at how the UX has grown over years and how it is predicted to grow in the next few years. So this is data from Nelson and Norman group. The left side graph is a logarithmic scale and the right side is a normal scale graph. So if you see this graph from 1950 to 1983, so it grew from about 10 people, mainly in the Bell Labs, to around 1000 people. So the growth factor was around 100. From 1983 to 2017, it grew around with a factor of 1000 to 1 million people. And from 2017 to 2050, the predicted growth is with a factor of 100, which is around 100 million people. So if you see the right side of the graph, it is like a exponential growth. So for the people who has questions about how UX is there as a career in future, it's going nowhere. It's going to grow much more in size. So let's look at key historic events which led to the evolution of UX, right? So one is the PC revolution, right? So from 1980 to 2000, the birth of the Mac and the birth of the Windows. So this boosted the growth of UX with a lot of GUI interfaces that came into the picture, right? In web revolution from 1989 with the birth of internet and then HTML in 1993, it became much more with a lot of this web interfaces. And Web 3.0 in 2006, where a lot of different functionalities were added to the web capability. So, a lot of this web application came into being, right? And the next boost was with the mobile revolution from 1993, and it's still going on. But, the first mobile app, which was built by IBM in 1993, mostly it was around productivity kind of apps. And then the birth of iPhone, as we all know, in 2007, where you could directly, have a touch screen and directly manipulate the things. And after that, nowadays there is a kind of a burst of so many apps. Everything is like an app nowadays, right? So I would pause a few seconds and ask this question. If you guys can paste on the chat, like, what do you feel like UX is an art or science, or is it a business? So I think a lot of people are saying it's a combination of all three. Some people are saying it's an art, and some people are saying it's a science. Okay, so look, let's look at what UX is, and I think a lot of folks have said it is a combination of all three. So let's see. Yes, it is a combination of all three, and the folks who have said it's very correct. So design can be an art, right? So you build a artifact or some clay model or some other kind of design, which is an art, right? But it is not necessary that art has to sell. So there might not be any business value attached to it, right? But if you are building any user experience, actually at the end of the day, you are solving users' problem and try to also create a business value. So any user experience which does not have any business value is like an art. But also to build user experience, you have to understand a lot of science and technology, right? So you have to understand user behavior, cognitive sciences, and you also have to apply technology to, create those kind of experience to solve user problems. So user experience is a combination of art, science, and business. So a lot of folks, thought UX as an art historically, but UX is not an art. Maybe it's design can be an art, and design can be anything. Design is a very broad term, right? Anything can be design, or maybe fine arts can be art, but UX is a combination of art, science, and business. So let's quickly look at how the UX roles have evolved over time, right? And there is no direction to read this diagram. It's just like a role cloud. So we have this graphic artist kind of people who do a lot of this graphic arts that has been there as a profession. From there, there has been one field which was called communication designers, and then there are visual designers who evolved. Some folks became UI designers as a role, and then with the evolution of web, they became web designers, and some of them did design and development and web developers. The other side of things is, a lot of people became industrial designers who grew to be usability engineers, and a lot of companies used to call human factors. So these are the guys who started with the industrial revolution, with the designing of machines, design of different objects, and maybe as simple as designing of chairs and all those ergonomics and all those things. And then with the evolution of web, information architect was also a role some of you who has been in this industry for 15 plus years might have seen, like some people had this title called information architects. And then, somewhere the UX designer term came into being, right? So then a lot of interactions came into place, and the term interaction design was more popular. Still UX designer is the broader term now, and then, then there is other profession that came into being, which was there from long time, is copywriter, mostly focused around the book kind of thing, right? Where they used to write a lot of contents for the book. And after that, when the web came, they used to write content for the web, content writer. And then now a lot of them has moved to UX writer. And there is a combination somewhere between UX design, interaction design, and UX writing, and becoming something like conversational design. On the other hand, you see like people in the systems, they became system designer who understood. These were the folks who started designing from the ERP world, understanding very complex distributed systems. And then, they combined to become service designer, where you look at end-to-end, journey of the users, right? End-to-end client experience. And then, the business strategies merged with UX design and formed a business designer. And this is an upcoming profession, and a lot of people in some of the organizations have titles like this business designer or venture designer. And UX research, obviously, and then product research, and now generative research. So you see a gamut of roles which has evolved, combined, and to form new roles as per required in the industry. And the titles has also been evolving with time. So next, what we'll see is, in this current complex world, what are the UX organization structures that are existing? Mostly, as you work in large enterprise, it becomes very, very complex. Like you have multiple business units, you have multiple product groups, and even each groups you have multiple products. So the challenge is, how to do domain-specific innovation within the product, so which is deep related to that particular product or that domain, because a company might also work in multiple domains, by the way. And also to maintain consistency across the product, and also look at the big picture where a user is using multiple of your products. So, so few broad structure that are predominant, and you can categorize these different models in 3 basic structure. Maybe people can come up with more names, but broadly you can categorize in 3 basic structure. One is a centralized model. We'll look into the details of each of this, a distributed model, and a hybrid model. So before we move into the details of each model, let's look what is needed for creating a product. So I think this diagram is very popular, and I think everybody have seen this diagram for once in their career. But so it says about what is needed for a product, right? As we look at UX, now let's look at product. Like product has to be desirable. Like what are your user needs? Because at the end of the day, you are trying to solve problems for the user. It has to be viable. It has to have a business value. Without the business value, if you have a product which doesn't sell, doesn't make any difference, right? And it has to be feasible. The available technology has to be available to create those desirable experience and that support the business requirements, right? And who are the key roles that are required to create this kind of experience are basically the three roles, like user experience, product manager, and development lead. That doesn't mean that there cannot be more roles. People from service, people from sales and marketing can also come in the product innovation group. But basically, these three skills are required. So user experience, people does the desirable, business needs is the viable, which is done by the product manager, and the feasible and the technical capability is done by the development lead. And this together is called a triad. And the triads can be layered. What do I mean by that? For a complex organization, triads can exist at different levels altogether, right? There can be a triad at a squad level. And I think in the first day presentation from Adam, we looked a little bit about the squad. So it's like, the cross-functional team who is responsible for a part, product, or a feature. And triad can also be there at a guild level. We'll look at what a guild is. Triads can there be also at an executive level, like a chief user experience officer, chief product officer, and chief technology. But that can also be triad. And the triads at different level maintain the consistency across different, and also to look at the bigger picture. So the leadership triads are focused on the bigger picture, right? How it works across different products, across different business units. Moving on to the next slide, we just spoke about squad, and in the first presentation, I think you guys already learned a lot about squads. But typically, the word squads come from military, right? Most of the team structures, organization, most of these things comes from military. So you have a product manager, typically one, UX team maybe typically two, and depends from organization to organization. The ratio might not be same in all the organization. And then development team around 6 to 7. So this is considered a group of around 6 to 10 members who are very tightly integrated and as a cross-functional team responsible for innovation. And they use normally design sprints to do the product discovery, and for delivery normally agile is followed. And they're also responsible for measuring the success of their product. Typical roles in the squad, and when I say roles, these are roles. There might not be always one person for each of these roles. One person may also play multiple roles. So it's like a squad lead sometimes if you have a larger team of UX, and maybe a UX designer who is dedicated. UX researcher may be dedicated if the size of the product is bigger, or it might be shared across multiple products. There might be a UX writer who is responsible for writing a lot of these messages, within the product and guides, on product guides and all those things. And finally, the UX developer or the UI developer are part of the squad. So let's move what a tribe is. And for larger organizations, there might be multiple squads, and then the squads need to be brought together under some leadership so that there is a consistency maintained across the squads. Say, for example, each of the squads is responsible for a part of the product, but when the user is using the product, needs to be looked as a whole. So you normally have a UX tribe leader, which might be a UX director, depend from organization to organization. You might have a dev tribe leader, like a dev director and a product director at that level, right? Now for more complex organizations, which goes bigger in size and very enterprise kind of organization, where there are a lot of these teams in this group. So you might have multiple tribes, right? And within each tribe, you will have a lot of squad teams. So each tribe either may be responsible for a product group, or they might be responsible for a business unit altogether, the business vertical altogether, depending on how the organization is set up. And still there is a need to have consistency within the tribes. Say, for example, if your customer is using multiple products, right? Let's say, for example, your customer is using multiple products within the Salesforce, then there needs to be consistency across the experience of different products within the Salesforce, right? Like a purchase module or some other module. And for our company like ADP, we have small business, medium business, large business, international business. And we also have similar kind of modules, maybe like payroll. Payroll might, require consistency for small and medium business, large business, international business. So that is called as a guild, which is a vertical, right? And the guild is responsible for all the common activities across different tribes. And the guild can also have a guild UX leader, guild product leader, and a guild dev leader. And the other roles that are there in the guild are like generative researcher. Generative researcher is a role which is a little different from product research in the sense that they do a lot of upfront research to figure out different trends, business trend, market trends, user trends, like maybe what would be the future of work, or some future of how the payment world is changing. So these kind of research actually will feed into creating the business goals and the roadmaps where we need to focus our business. And because with the changing user behavior, this is very important to focus on the business. And there might also be a guild which is looking at the entire user journey, right? A user journey might cut across multiple products. So the guild is responsible for looking at the user journey across multiple products. Say, for example, if you have a buyer experience in e-commerce, right? So there might be different product groups like electronics, and then so many, right? But the buyer experience is something which cuts across products. Same for any ERP, CRM, or any big applications where the users are using multiple of your applications. The same persona might use multiple of your applications. Moving on to the next slide. And the guilds can also be like a design system guild. For the folks who, I think most of the folks understand design system nowadays, but for the folks who have not heard about it, this is the common language, design patterns, voice and tone, accessibility standards, which is supposed to be an umbrella guideline to be used by all products in a company. And there are web components, mobile UI components, and SDKs. To give an example, which is more popular, maybe your material design is a kind of design system, right? And there are a few key roles in a design system which are very important, like interaction design, UX developer, a brand and visual creative to align it to the brand guidelines, a voice and tone, which is also very important, and accessibility standards. So there might be few persons who are playing these roles, or there might be each dedicated person for each who are specialists in each of these roles. Now, going back to see what a centralized team looks like, and this is one of the oldest model, and a lot of startups have been also working in the early days in this model. So it's so UX team works like a central agency, and there is a resource pool. So the projects comes to the UX group, and the resource is kind of loaned to that particular squad. And for the time period of the project runs, that person is dedicated to that squad. But after the project is over, the person again moves back to the resource pool. And so how does this help? So this helps in maintaining the big picture, right? Because all the UX are reporting to one organization in a centralized pool. But where it lacks in weak cross-team collaboration and deep domain innovation within the product. Because UX designer might be changing, the product every 6 months. So they are not very deep inside the product, so that they can see the product over a cycle of time, and also can measure the experience success for that particular product. Moving on to the next model, which is a distributed model, and a lot of companies still follow this model. And distributed model can be in different forms. So one distributed model is the UX team member is a part of the squad and is reporting to some leader in the squad, either a PO leader or a dev leader. So and sometimes the distributed model might be divided by tribes. So each tribe might have their UX teams, which consist of a number of people, right? So how does it help? It helps in creating deep domain focused experience, right? Because the designers and the researchers are working in the domain for a long time, very closely with the team, with a lot of cross team innovation and design sprints. But it helps in that way. But what it lacks in the understanding the bigger picture, right? Because what happens across products, what happens for the user, who uses multiple of the products. So this team is mostly focused around that particular product, not at the larger ecosystem. And also it causes in creating different style guides for different products. If you don't have a very strong design system, it ends up every product having their own patterns and standards. Now let's look at hybrid setup, and there can be different ways of hybrid setup, but I'm just giving you an example in a very large complex company, right? So these are these verticals are the tribes. So tribe 1, tribe 2, and tribe 3. And each tribe consists of multiple squads. There can be, for a large organization, each tribe can be around 1,000 people. So, including product, technology, and user experience. So there can be so many squads. Like you can compare like so many Scrum teams, right? So there can be multiple tribes. And we spoke about that there are journey guilds which cuts across multiple tribes, and there can be design system guild. And the generative research is normally a shared one, right? Because it mostly look at the trends, how the user behaviors are changing, and those kind of aspects, right? So this is how a large complex companies organized. And a company similar to the size of ADP or a bigger company than ADP are also organized in a similar fashion. So, once we have looked at the organization and we looked also at the history and evolution of UX, also what I wanted to say is about the future trends and the UX skills required. Because the organization is evolving, the users are evolving, the user needs are evolving. So the future, what are the trends, and what are the UX skills we as designers need to inculcate. So, so let's look a bit, pause for a bit and look at the history of industrial revolution, because this has a direct correlation with, the growth of how the technology is evolving and growing, and how the design is changing over time. So Industrial 1.0, around 1784, it was about the steam power, steam engine, and steam-based machines. And then 2.0 was those mass production examples like Ford, and then electric energy also came to being. A lot of things were, electrical machines which were doing the task. So the industrial design evolved at that point in time, and a lot of industrial designers evolved in that point in time, designing those kind of machines. So, and Industry 3.0, most of which we have seen, from last so many years, is the automation, the computers and the mobile things that came into the picture. And this has been all the experience that we have designed, like mobile apps, web apps, different kinds of touch experience, and all the things that we are very familiar with and use in a day-to-day design process. So what is 4.0? And we are already almost started 4.0, right? It is more about cyber physical systems, Internet of Things, and network, which is the change that is happening. So what does that mean, right? It is about industrial robotics. So you see a lot of, and you are seeing a lot of posts that people are, posting videos, and a lot of companies are posting videos about how this industry is being run by robots. It's more about cybersecurity, because a lot of things will go online. Internet of Things, where each device can speak to each other. It doesn't need to be a communication through humans, but device can communicate with each other. 3D printing, most of you already know about. Advanced human machine interface. What does that mean is, it doesn't mean that the humans will be totally replaced by machines, but maybe instead of operating a machine or a robot, you can just voice control it or give very basic commands to it, and the system with artificial intelligence can figure out most of it, right? So you don't need to do monitoring. The system itself can do its own monitoring. Big data, I think all of you know about. Augmented reality and virtual reality, though we have seen bits and pieces of it, but now over a period of time, these immersive experiences will become a lot into reality. And artificial intelligence is obviously the game changer. So these are the key things of Industrial Revolution 4.0. And with this Industrial Revolution 4.0, experience are becoming more immersive in nature, right? User is embedded within the experience, rather than experience being an external thing and you need to interact with that experience. It's more integrated. It's more integrated in the device. It's more integrated in the system. And we look some videos of what integrated means. And invisible, right? You don't need to see all the experience that is around you, right? Like a security in the airport, right? If it is invisible, right, you don't feel the the pain, or you don't feel the panic, but actually it is doing its job. And the security is is the best when it is invisible, right? And it will not be only about 2D screens, which we do currently design for 2D screens, but it will be of 3D physical spaces, holographic, VR, and haptic. And natural interactions will come into picture, like voice, gestures, AR, and VR. So let's look at some of the examples. I hope you can listen to this video. If you can't.
Products that look incredibly real.
There you go.
All right.
Nice work. And now we can position that.
Thank you.
That just where you want it. So now we can go into the HoloRoom and check it out in full scale.
Sounds good.
Okay.
And then you're able to go in and put these goggles on and be fully immersed in the space that you just created.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead and just slip that on.
Fun part is I can't hear.
Now I'll be seeing
Anyway,
what you're
that's
seeing
fine.
here in the app.
Oh, wow.
Audience is able
Oh
to
my
do that.
gosh. Oh, that's crazy.
You can move throughout various points in your room
What this
and view what
video
it's
is
going to
showing
look
you
like.
is,
Even
see
changing
how the experience is
materials
changing
like
and becoming more
countertops,
immersive
paint
in
colors,
nature.
or cabinet finishes.
I think we should change the paint color. I think we were looking at what,
Pacific Shoreline.
Pacific Shoreline. Can we change it?
I'll go ahead and change that right now. There you go.
Oh, wow. Oh, that looks much better. Yeah, it looks fantastic.
From there, you're able to take that room that you've built and you can port it over to Google Cardboard. It's a cardboard headset that you can take any smart.
Okay, so I think it's either both are not coming together. Anyway, so what the video says is the experience is more immersive. So nowadays, when you want to design a house, you use some 3D software in your computer, and you try to see how the house is, and you try to visualize in your mind how it may look if it is in a 3D level. But you see this company LOWE'S, they have designed a 3D experience where you can customize and take a walk and see your house and how things are arranged in the house. You can also change styles and take it back into a Google Cardboard where you can take it back home and see the same experience. So let's move on to the next. Okay, so what this video basically shows is, and nowadays it's very predominant currently in the situation of lockdown, like most of the classes, maybe some of your kids are doing online classes. A lot of it is like, and sitting and listening to lectures, some whiteboard. Sometimes people are using Google classes, classrooms and all those kind of stuff. Some people are trying to make PPT, but say for senior students, still maybe they are able to grasp. But for young students, right, who are still class 5 in the primary and pre-primary, it's very difficult to grasp concept. So this kind of virtual reality will become more popular in education, and this kind of experience also needs to be. So how it will help is, so the experience is more immersive. It's very easy to learn. You can go inside and see the different organs of the body, or some chemistry or physics. Because if you are doing classes online, still your the lab and all those things are still missing, right? How to do lab online and how to explain this 3D kind of immersive experience might help you to create virtual labs. The other things are like touch surfaces everywhere. Right now, your laptop or the screen is touch, is the only area where you can touch, or your mobile screen is the only area you can touch. But there will be multiple surfaces which you can touch, right? Any surfaces you can touch, and it will take your feedback. Also, maybe going to the store, you don't need to take the shopping cart along with you, or maybe carry a bag. You might wear a VR glass, something like a Google Glass. Go to the store, add the item into the list, and into the shopping cart, and it will be sent to your home. You don't need to carry things around with you, but at the same time you can see the different products and feel the different products. And then at stores, a lot of us struggle if you are going to a new shop what is available, and if you are fascinated by a particular brand, it becomes more challenging to figure out in a very big mall like Central or something. Though there are things written in the wall, but you have to navigate there to just see that kind of level. But it might also help in giving direction. These are reality, so these are images from real applications which a lot of companies are already working on and have built and implemented. And maybe we are from home, right? Say for example in the COVID situation, right? So you cannot go to a shopping mall, and it's discouraged if you go to a shopping mall because the social distance cannot be maintained, right? So, but what if you can wear a VR glass and travel inside the shopping mall, select the items, add to cart, and it's shipped to your home? And maybe you don't need to have a mall like Amazon. Instead of the app, can create a VR experience where you can actually see the product in much more details and understand, get a physical kind of view of the product in a 3D mode. Which is currently not there, right? A lot of times the product we buy is different from what we get. And there are a lot of complaints of the users in those apps. So, and face recognition, this is what I got an image from Hyderabad airport, which is available in the internet. But here the challenge is the security is there, but it's not hidden, right? Every time you have to look and, sometimes you have to adjust your face. But a lot of airports in US actually, it's not hidden, but it's not on your face. Like, you stand in a particular place and, it checks you in. So that is also there. Let's also a lot of brain interfaces are being experimented in MIT labs and different other universities, how to control different things with your thought. So let's see a video what it means immersive and hidden. Let's look into another video.
Are your walls doing enough for you? Are they smart enough? Do they spend way too much time holding up the ceiling and dividing your home into rooms? Shouldn't they also be listening to you and anticipating your every need? Researchers have now found a way to make the most responsive walls yet. Imagine, for example, as you sit down on the sofa, the TV turns on. Lights dim when you start watching something on your laptop, or Alexa lets you know that your kids have turned on a portable video game system somewhere in the house. This isn't very difficult to do. The first step is converting a wall into a giant antenna. In this study, researchers used tape to make a grid on the wall, then covered it over with water-based paint containing nickel. They removed the tape, which left behind a pattern of metallic diamonds that act as electrodes. Then they connected the electrodes to a computer and painted the wall with standard latex paint, hiding any signs of its new capabilities. Now the wall can watch your every move. Touching or moving an arm or limb close to the wall changes the wall's electrostatic fields, just as a finger touching an iPad does. It can tell if you're exercising or heading for the kitchen, and if connected to your house computer, may one day turn on energizing music or flip the kitchen lights on. The newly alert wall can even sense what you are interacting with in the room. Lamps, laptops, TVs, and other electronic devices all generate distinctive electromagnetic fields. Eventually, such walls, which the team created for $20 per square meter.
So you could see, like, the experience is totally integrated. What if you don't need to have a separate television, you don't need to have a separate, Alexa kind of device, so many devices we have. How if it is integrated within the experience of the wall, right? And the wall itself turns into different features and functionality and can feel you, right? So you don't need multiple devices, and everything might be integrated to it. You go into a plain room, it displays your television when you want. It can feel you, it can switch on and off the lights and all those kind of things, right? So it is more integrated. It is more, into the scene. So this kind of things needs to be designed. So let's look at a few key skills of the future from a UX standpoint. Conversation design is becoming big day by day, and this is a skill where people should invest in. Gestures and movement are being there for quite some time, but freehand gestures are becoming more popular rather than touching on any surface. 3D experience, holographic, VR, AR, we saw some examples. Designing for multiple senses, right? Currently, you might be able to control with your eye or with your brain. So you have so many sense organs, right? Why design for very few of them? Physical design for invisible interfaces, we saw, like the design for the wall might be an example. Designing for security might be an example. The wall had to be designed, or certain things which are integrated needs to be designed. And service and business design, which is there from quite some time, but as you grow in your career, this is quite important, right? So because you have to pick up service and business design skills. So I will quickly share a skill graph, which I mostly share with my team. I don't know if you have seen this, but this is something which I tried to create. So when you start your career, you have skill 1, or maybe you have multiple skills, but you are at a level 1. As you grow in your career, you go to skill level 2, 3, 4 for that particular group of skills, right? But once you achieve the max of that skill, right, so it kind of flatten, right? So you cannot achieve more of that skill because you have already achieved. So your career also flattens with time. Then you start achieving the next skill at some point in time in your career, not wait for and then you try to move in the level 1, 2, and 3, and after certain time it also flattens, but still you get more growth in your career, right? Because you achieved a new skill. And same thing for, as you keep on achieving more skills, you see the graph, it becomes like an exponential growth in your career. So the only way to grow in your career is to achieve the relevant skills and also understand how the industry is changing, how the market is changing, also to understand how the technological landscape is changing, also to understand how the business requirements are changing with time and the user requirements are changing with time. So this is very critical, and acquire the skills, keep on acquiring those skills and become your version from 1.0 to 2.0, your own 2.0 and your own 3.0, and that's how you grow in your career. So, last few minutes, before we move on to questions, this section is specifically focused for folks who are new into UX. And I think, this might help you in understanding. So for UX interviews, what we normally look for, there are a list of things that we look for. We definitely look for your LinkedIn profile. We look into your resume. Portfolio is very important for designers. We also try to figure out your design skills from your portfolio and design assignments. We also check the fitment to the role. Sometimes you might be a very good designer, but might not fit the required role. So, that might also be a case. We also look for out-of-the-box thinking skills, fitment with the team in general, how the person will be able to work in a team, and able to handle different kinds of situation and show leadership in that situation. I will quickly go into the details of this in the next few minutes. So LinkedIn profile is very important because a lot of these resumes currently are sourced through LinkedIn, specifically for design and maybe for products and technology as well. So also these UX positions are filled through references, so only good work can get you good reference. Design your resumes very carefully, and one-pager resumes are now common. I see a lot of one-pager resumes coming, but the challenge is what you write into the one page is important. It's not important to write one-page resumes. It is important what you write. A lot of people like skills write Microsoft Word, PowerPoint. Still, I get a lot of resumes. So those might not be relevant to write, right? Focus on the few specific skills for which you will be hired for, and also try to focus on your experience. Don't try to put experience here and there so that the person who is scanning your resume gets confused, because there are hundreds and hundreds of resumes that pour in. So the HR person or the UX person who is scanning your resume need to have very few amount of time to just understand your overall profile. So design your resume in that form, and also from your resume design, people are able to understand how you are able to design information and represent information in a 2D interface. Also, portfolio is important. Every designer should have a portfolio. If your company does not allow you to show your work, build your own portfolio. Do some third-party applications on your own and do your portfolio. Doesn't matter, right? So don't only put bright UI screenshots in your portfolio, because that can be, anybody can copy from anywhere. That doesn't build trust in the interviewer, right? So at least showcase one product step by step, right from research to persona to journey map, task flows, and until prototype. So, and you should be able to explain that entire process, because during the interview, people will be asking you detailed questions. If your portfolio does not have that, then they will try to probe in details and you might not have answers for. And only add work into the portfolio which you can back up and which you are very conversant with. Otherwise, in the interview, you will fail miserably. From a design assignment, a few suggestions is focus on the problem statement. A lot of people directly jump to solution, and I've seen people giving standard mobile apps as one of the solution which is already available. Do some secondary research if possible in the internet, right? Because for an assignment you don't have so much time to do a big research, but do some secondary research just to show that you tried to understand the domain or the particular problem statement in details. Mention your assumptions very clearly, because assumptions are very important, because you might not understand all of it, but you can also mention, okay, I understood this and these are my assumptions, because the design problem might not be in so much of details. Focus on the process, how you arrive to the solution. Look for out of the box ideas. Don't always put mobile apps, because when we go through a lot of resumes, a lot of people just put mobile, and even for assignments, we give some assignment, people don't consider the other form factors. Maybe for that design, a web form factor or a desktop form factor would have been a better than a mobile form factor. So focus on the what the idea requires. Maybe a touch screen, maybe a different gadget might be required, and you might design a different gadget. So think from out of the box ideas, and design for very few screens. So in detail, don't need to design every screen in detail, because few screens people will be judging your understanding of the detailed design for that particular screen. So these are some of the suggestions, and looking at the interviews, normally it varies from company to company, but these are following things that are being looked into, like how the person fit. So there might be a fitment round with the HR might call you and ask, like, you're around your skills and you're around your experience. Sometimes some designer might call you for 30 minutes and do that. Design round, which is a detailed discussion about your portfolio and your design assignment to figure out your design skills. Team round, basically how you fit with the team. Sometimes you are given an opportunity to present your design to your team or different stakeholders in product management and development. A management round is, I think all of you know what is management and HR round. With that, I end up my presentation here, and questions, please. Over to you, Menka.
Thank you, Tatal. Thank you for the fantastic session. We have a question from Sharan Pillai. Is it better for a team to hire specialists, for example, UX research specialist, or to hire generalist, for example, UI designer who can also develop?
Ideally, if your company is able to hire you, you should hire a specialist. But it also depends on the available budget, type of project, and the type of company, right? So if you can hire only one person and you have the budget for one UX, you will definitely hire a unicorn or a generalist. But it is very difficult to get a generalist, for instance, right? A person cannot be master of UX design, UX research, as well as UX development. Same thing, like a lot of people say, I'm a full stack developer. But when we hire full stack developer, we see that a lot of people are either proficient in the middle tier or the backend, not in the UI. Some people are very proficient in the UI. So, it's not able, if you are able to get a unicorn, then, go for it. Everybody wants to get a unicorn, but are the unicorns really available in the market? That would be the question. So I would suggest, if you have the budget, these are specialized skills. Like development, you have so many skills, right? It's not about UX. UX is a profession. UX is not a particular skill is like UX. Within UX, you have so many skills, which I showed, right? Similarly, a backend developer or a database developer, a Java developer, a HTML or a mobile developer might be different developers, right? Can you get a person to do, database architecture plus, Java plus if required web, and, then if you can get that unicorn, should always go for it. But ideally, these are specialized skills, and people specialize, and even in the universities and institutes of design, they have these specialized skills in the masters. A lot of people focus around the specialized skills in different parts of the globe.
Great, thank you. So let's take a couple of questions more. So there is one more question. Also, how is a technology like VR supposed to be sustainable in its current state, where it's a bulky and expensive product, whereas solutions like education need it to be accessible to every economic background? A very relevant question given the COVID situation, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did not get the first part of the question. What was it, bulky?
So what Charan Pillai is trying to say is, how is a technology like VR supposed to be sustainable in its current state, where it is bulky and expensive, whereas solutions like education need to be accessible for all economic background? Yes,
correctly said, right? So we always do with what is available. Currently, the VR is not very successful because of the reason, it's not about bulky, but it's not also cheap, right? But Google has invented a method with Google Cardboard. At least you have some bit of some quality of phone which you can use with Google Cardboard. So people are, it's not evolved to that state, but people are trying to do. I know this specifically because one of my friends has a VR startup basically for education. And he did a lot of research where the success and failures, and I was consulting with his company. So it's very challenging, right? Because it's not for for the masses, but even for the mainstream schools, the international schools, still they have not moved to VR. But what we expect in the future, maybe things will be much more cheaper, because nowadays people have a phone. But previous, if you check 5 years, 10 years back, nobody had a smartphone. Like only few people had this smartphone. Now even everybody, even your people who work at your house, maids, and those people also have some form of smartphone, maybe Chinese or something, but they have some form of smartphone. If we are able, and with time, the capability of those phones, the processors and the memory and everything is increasing, and it's becoming cheaper day by day, right? So at some point in time, with Google Cardboard and those kind of phones, it might be possible. But if there is no alternative, still we could use voice alternatives to reach out. A lot of people have used radio channels to broadcast education, and all those kind of things are still there. Yeah, but VR is still not in the mainstream, but it will be, people are trying to bring it to the mainstream. Only challenge is, as you mentioned, the cost. But what we see from the research, it is being adopted slowly, step by step. Similarly, what happened with mobile, right? So, now people are using less of laptop and more of mobile. Mobile users are more, people are using apps on mobile. There are few people who use Amazon in a laptop, or Myntra, or Myntra so anyway went to the full mobile version some years back. So yes, over time it will be cheap, but there we can also explore different option at this point in time, which is available, which people are exploring.
Great. There is another question from Rakesh Natarajan. How important are UX skills for a backend middleware developer? Also, how would you measure out-of-box thinking skills?
Yes, that's a very good question. So what is a product? So to create a product, you need different kinds of skills, right? So it's like the blind man and the elephant, right? So if you blindfold everybody and ask to touch the elephant, the story that we read in our childhood or listened from our grandparents, people told it's a leg, people touch the tail, told rope, trunk, something, body, wall. So people could not figure out what the product is, right? Only if the blind man would have consulted each other, they could have figured out that it is an elephant, not this different objects that they were speaking about. Similarly, but to have a common discussion between those blind men, there should be common understanding of each other's skills. So we all are like the blind men. Somebody is representing the UX, somebody is representing a backend, as you mentioned, somebody product, somebody business, somebody maybe sales. So if all the blind men come together, they are able to figure. But if a UX designer is speaking to you or something and you are not able to interpret that thing, so it will be very difficult. And if you are speaking some technology to the UX designer, that person is not able to understand, that will also become very difficult. So not only for a backend guy or a middle tier guy, it is important to understand experience. Similarly, for UX designer, it is also important to understand a bit of business and also understand technology. And as you grow in your career, you have to understand more of business and technology, because at the end of the day, why we create products, it's not for the technology. It's not for any other thing. At the end of the day, we create products because we want to solve some user problem and also earn money from that product, right? So yes, everybody needs to have understanding of the other skills. You may not be an expert in UX, but you need to definitely understand what you are building, because at the end of the day, your backend technology is what is just creating is experience for the user. So if your backend technology is not nice, you might not be able to create great experience, because if you run a query, it might get stuck, right? What's the experience? The UI is very beautiful, the experience, because experience is a factor of all the blind men coming together. Yeah, so see, the industry has evolved over time, right? So if you see which was the first role to come into being was the chief technology officer, right? Because technology was the first, they are early in the industry, and even before UX came as a full-time, kind of profession, and it was formalized. Technology existed still long back. Then came the chief product officer, and nowadays a lot of companies are having the chief design officer, right? So over a period of time, you will see a lot of folks, having this title as chief design officer. Why? Because design has moved from just being the UI kind of thing, right, which people used to think, to strategy. Because at the end of the day, the experience that you create for your customers are actually creating businesses. are changing business, are keeping in the market. And the presentations you have heard from few of our speakers in the last few days have been speaking around it. Now, how to get into the role in the longer term? Definitely, a chief user experience officer will not be sitting and designing most of the stuff, right? But chief user experience officer will be somebody who has evolved from design, have picked up business skills, and can create the strategy for experience in line with what is requirement for business. So you have to understand business design. You have to understand, everything about business. So, business models. You have to understand value propositions. You have to understand blue ocean strategies. You have to understand Horizon 1, Horizon 2, Horizon 3, how this work. You have to understand all the gamut of venture design, right? And business design for getting into that role.
Great. Thank you so much, Kapil, for this fantastic session. I'm sure the audience loved it. As a special token of appreciation from all of us, here is a virtual badge for you. So the QR code will take you to your own Hall of Fame page on our webpage. And once again, a big thank you